Welcome to the Life Curation Podcast. I'm your host, Andrina Tisi. Together, we will explore thoughts, inspirations, and conversations that feed our soul, spark the mind, and nourish the body. Thank you so much for being here to learn and grow, and for walking this journey called life with me. Thank you for being here on the Life Curation Podcast. Today, I'm sharing a conversation I had with Cris Bueno. I met Cris a few years ago when she came to one of my yoga retreats. From right the beginning, Cris struck me as a young, dynamic, and ambitious woman, and I'm thrilled to have her on my podcast today. We talk about what it means to be young, female, and successful in the finance sector in Switzerland. Cris shares her experience and has some really interesting and refreshing insights. Before we start, a bit more about Cris. She's a relationship manager at a boutique Swiss bank. She works closely with wealthy families and individuals in all aspects related to their wealth. She provides investments advice, helps clients structure their accounts, and manages the transmission of wealth to the next generation. Cris is an economist by education and a banker by profession. Since finishing her studies in London, she has had the opportunity to work with several Swiss institutions, from global banks to local family offices. She's currently a director at a boutique Swiss bank, working together with wealthy families and entrepreneurs to structure their wealth and managing their finances. Cris is a passionate people's person, and working in private banking means she can combine this passion with her background in economics and the financial markets. On a personal level, she just got married, loves to ride her horse, and is soon mom to a little dachshund. So, let's listen in. Hi, Cris. It's so nice to have you here on my podcast and in my bedroom on the floor.
Hi, Andrina. Always a pleasure.
So, Cris is actually with me here recording, so it's really fun. So, with every guest, I like to start with some this or that questions. So you can totally answer spontaneously, just what first comes top of your mind. Coffee or tea?
Tea.
Vegetables or fruits?
Vegetables.
Taking a bath or shower?
Shower.
You're fast.
It's easy.
Classical or modern art?
Modern.
Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings?
Lord of the Rings.
Wow, you are fast. Cool. Thank you. So, Cris, tell us a little bit about your culture background.
Well, I'm originally from Spain. I was born in Madrid to Spanish parents, even though if you see me, you wouldn't think that I am. So blonde, blue eyes, very fair skin, always gets sunburned, prefers the mountains to the beach. So yeah, not your typical Spanish person, but very much Spanish in my heart, although I have lived most of my life outside of Spain. So I studied in the UK, and I've been living and working in Switzerland for 11 years now.
11 years already. Wow. Cool. Well, thank you. So, people know already a little bit about your job and what you do. Mm-hmm. So what's a situation in your job that makes you say, yes, exactly, that's why I do it? And moments of this pure joy and satisfaction.
Mm-hmm. I am very much a people's person. I love building relationships. I love making connections, be it with clients or with colleagues in the office, with managers, with other stakeholders, just finding that those elements of commonality that then help build up a relationship. And for me, the moment of a sort of joy is when you really feel that you're building a long-lasting, trusting relationship, and where you can really become a partner to those people and make a difference in their lives.
So nice. I remember when I was working in sales for hotels, somebody once asked me what sales is. And I just said, it's just relationship building.
Correct.
It's all about the relationship.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. And that's, you give, in a way, individuals clarity over a very complex matter like their wealth. And you kind of transmit everything that a large bank is with all its complications. You simplify it to bring the best through to the client. And I think in the end, that's what makes the difference.
For sure. And I think one word, the clarity with a complex topic, what you mentioned, I think, and sometimes I feel it's a little bit misunderstood, but I feel it's also very emotional, and I think then having that clarity and being able to give that to your client is wonderful.
Absolutely. I mean, clients are not really used to talking about their wealth.
Exactly.
And with you, they can speak freely. I mean, they can tell you their deepest desires, their wishes, their worries, and many of the things that you will get to know from your clients are very private things. But it's something that as a banker, you need to know in order to help them manage their wealth in the best way possible. We always say it's kind of like being a doctor, but for their finances. So it's
so cool.
It's the same sort of, personal relationship.
Yes.
And you need to know all the nitty gritty and all the, dirty, stuff going on in the background, to really be able to give the best advice to the clients. Yeah.
Amazing. So when you tell people what you do, just tell me a little bit what their reaction is. Do you feel people are judgmental? And I don't mean that negative. They can also be positive. But, working in the financial industry in Switzerland is, I'm going to say now, stereotypical a little bit, right? Yes. So how do people react?
There is a stigma attached to Swiss private banking. I think there isn't a single Bond movie that doesn't involve some sketchy criminal opening a numbered account in a Swiss bank account and depositing a suitcase full of money.
So true.
And I mean, that might have been perhaps true in the past. But it definitely isn't the industry that I work in today. It's an extremely professional industry with the maximum standards of compliance. I mean, it is not easy to open a bank account in Switzerland nowadays. But of course, there is that stigma attached to it, so people are always like, oh, do you manage the wealth of, dictators in Africa and stuff like that? And that often comes with negative sort of judgment attached to it. But, often it's very much a chance for me to explain what we really do and to make people see things from the client's perspective. So, we also manage the wealth of entrepreneurs, of company owners who live in countries with very corrupt political systems. And having their wealth in Switzerland is the only chance that they have to actually preserve their hard-earned money and transmit it to the next generation. So, there's always a way to see things from both perspectives. And nowadays, in a very transparent world, we really try to offer that, safety to families in countries that really need it the most.
And if you're comfortable sharing, how old were you when you got a pretty high job in senior management in a very well-established financial institution in Switzerland? So
I was 27 years old when I was appointed vice president of one of Switzerland's top 2 banks. So that is the first rank of senior management, so nothing too fancy. But I was given the possibility to manage a team of young relationship managers and to develop a business acquisition strategy for the bank.
It's amazing. You were even younger than I thought.
No.
And how were you received internally? And I think, was it, I don't know, I can imagine it was challenging, but you tell us a little bit more. And I think my question also is, was it more challenging being a woman? Was it more challenging being very young? Mm-hmm. Was it a combination?
Mm-hmm. It's a very good question, and one that I often think about myself. I think what was key for me and what has been key throughout my career is the fact that I had very strong cheerleaders internally, mentors, people who sort of saw my capabilities and my talent and my passion, and they really pushed me and, gave me opportunities where one would have thought more experience was necessary. So I was very, very lucky. When I was appointed vice president, I was actually given the title by two female bosses.
Cool.
Who, since I started in the company, really pushed me to sort of develop myself and to always aim higher and take on more responsibility. So that was really fantastic. And I think when you get given that chance, perhaps earlier than you would have expected, it makes you work twice as hard to sort of prove them right. How was it received internally? Be it you're a woman or you're young or these sort of things that tend to have a negative stigma attached to it in terms of, or in the financial sector. At the end of the day, people only care about one thing, and that's if you're competent. So there may be an initial subconscious judgment, right? That sort of split second judgment where you first see someone and you don't even want to think it, but inside you're kind of like, oh, they're young, or oh, a woman. Mm-hmm. But it's very easy to actually prove that wrong, and you just have to work at it, and you just have to be competent. And I think as soon as you've had the chance to prove yourself, I mean, you're going to have to put yourself out there. People have to see you in action in a way. But once you've proven that you can be competent and that you can, solve problems, then people won't think twice about whether you're young or whether you're Swiss or non-Swiss, which is also,
something
true. That people might consider holds you back, whether you're, actually born in Switzerland or you're coming in from abroad. At the end of the day, it's really, people just want you to be competent and to be good at your job and to be able to solve problems and bring results.
That makes me feel really better.
Yeah.
And how was it with your clients? Was it similar? And I know, you're also working with a lot of the Spanish-speaking clientele. How were you received from them?
With clients, and this is something that I would also offer as advice to anyone who is in a client-facing role, I think honesty is really the best policy. And I think if from the very beginning you come across as honest and down to earth as possible, then the client will always respect that, And I've had meetings where I've been asked things that I didn't know. And rather than sort of trying to find an answer or trying to sort of, you just tell the client, let me come back to you, let me look into it with our specialists. And that's something that's always been very appreciated by them. I think from a client perspective, it takes a while to build trust. And again, it's more actions than words. But my goal has always been to establish myself as their representative facing the bank, as someone who's always looking out for their best interests, and as someone who, no matter what is going on internally in the bank, will always look out for the client. Right?
Yes. Yeah. And I think you touched on it a little bit before. Money and wealth are still a pretty big taboo topic, on the dinner table,
yes,
with friends,
yeah.
But also within the families, right? So why do you think that's the case?
Wealth is a funny subject. I think it's a matter that most families, especially those with established fortunes, try to keep as private and to themselves as possible. I think you know as well as I do, we live in a very unequal society, and especially inherited wealth, where there's no real, there's no real, shall we say, merit behind it. Just the fact that you happen to have been born to that family at that time, right? I think that is one reason why families are less likely to discuss wealth. I think, in terms of self-made individuals, I think it's very different. I think they're more comfortable to discuss wealth because they can explain how that wealth came about and all the efforts that they put in place to make that happen. But in any case, there is definitely a stigma attached to discussing wealth in public. And I think it really is to do with the fact that not many people can be considered wealthy nowadays.
Yes. Do you think with inheritance, especially if there is, big money there, do you feel there is shame from the younger generations?
I wouldn't necessarily say shame. I would definitely say there's, how would you put it, respect, or at least I think that's what the parents hope to receive from the children. At least the families that I work with, the children are very aware of sort of not just their rights to this wealth, but also the responsibilities that come with it. And I work in a family office now, and the whole transmission of wealth is almost like a ritual. So it involves educating the children. It involves bringing them into the family business. It involves explaining to them the importance of preserving that wealth throughout generations and not, just squandering it or sort of using it for enrichment, right? So I think it's also a cultural thing. I think in Switzerland, for example, even extremely wealthy families are extremely modest. I mean, you will see sort of very wealthy people driving about in deadbeat cars or, living in their 100-year-old little chalet that hasn't been renovated in years, but that's just how they like it. And you will never know that behind that person is a huge fortune. So I think it's also a cultural issue.
Yeah. And since you started out, what do you feel has been the biggest change in the working environment for, Swiss, foreigners, male, female, young, older, just a change that has happened over the last years?
It's a very good question. I think one of the changes that I've seen, and it's a very positive development, is really employees actively caring about the well-being of their employers actively caring about the well-being of their employees. And, even, for example, courses in terms of stress management, in terms of self-preservation, learning techniques. I think that's been a very, very positive development. I think obviously themes like burnouts, stress-induced situations and problems have been on the rise, especially in countries like Switzerland, where many people work in very sort of high-stress, high-powered jobs. And we're not born knowing how to cope with that, right? So we might have the education, we might have the tools, but I think no one has the innate knowledge of, wow, how do I cope with this anxiety attack? Or how do I cope with, never-ending pressure and never-ending work? So it's very important to train people how to manage, unfortunately, but we have to know how to manage that, I think, to be able to survive in these kind of industries. One thing that I see happening now, and which I think is so wonderful, is this massive COVID-related experiment of home office and flexible working and remote working and not having to be present in the office for 12 hours a day, right? And I think that is, it's fantastic. It's fantastic. I honestly hope that this is the beginning of a new way of working.
Do you think it will be?
I honestly hope so. I honestly hope so. I think that many companies may be reluctant to admit it or accept it. But I think if they do not offer that to employees, then they will just lose out. They will lose out to the competition who has better infrastructure, is more flexible, is more modern, has, a freer thinking management, and will implement that.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. I think it's so interesting how, before COVID, which we're probably going to say in many different aspects in our life, home office was for many companies, doesn't matter what industry, no, we can't do it. And then suddenly we had to.
Yeah.
And then it's possible.
Absolutely.
Right. And I also find it interesting how, talking to different people, some people love it to stay at home and work from home, and some people don't like it at all. So it's really interesting how also the personalities come in. And hopefully the, companies, again, whichever industry, can also maybe find a creative way of doing partial home office. Correct. Or whatever, depending where you live, you can do home office or not, right?
I mean, I couldn't agree more. I really think that this, we always talk about work-life balance, but really, if you are in an office 12 hours a day, is there such a thing as work-life balance? No, of course there isn't, right? Of course, because you work 12 hours, you sleep 8. So there's nothing, there's nothing left. Then you've got your weekend and where you've got to actually go shopping because you don't have time to shop during the week. And you've got to cram all of this, all of your personal things into 2 days. Of course it doesn't work, right? So, I think that this change and this trend towards, I'm not saying 100% home office, but just flexible working, let your employees decide, is going to be massive. And I think one specific, group that it's going to benefit a lot is working mothers.
Yes.
Right. I mean, I've had so many questions come to me in, essays during my education and my master's program, ideas to make sure that women are more integrated after giving birth. And nothing really worked because at the end of the day, the mother needs flexibility. And that's the one thing that employees were never really willing to offer.
And I think now even more because schools and kindergarten and even kitas, they're, as soon as the child has a little bit of a cough, they need to stay home.
Yes.
Right? So it's even more that the flexibility is needed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And at the end of the day, we, for example, I think many companies said home office, so many issues, security issues, connectivity issues, technology issues, could never happen. And then it had to happen. And from what I've read and from what I've heard, it worked perfectly fine. Yes. In fact, it was even more efficient because people weren't spending 2 hours a day commuting back and forth from work, right? And I think that should have been a major eye-opener for corporations far and wide. And if I'm not mistaken, Facebook, for one, has implemented a policy of work from home forever, if employees so wish. At the end of the day, I think that's really what has to be given to employees, the choice, the freedom to decide where they work best, how they work best, and just let them get on with it.
Yes, and I think at the end, it comes back to what you mentioned when we talked about, being received in a team. And if you do your job well,
yes,
it doesn't matter really how many hours you work or where you work, as long as you do your best.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, absolutely. At least as a banker, we're very used to being constantly reachable. So for me, it actually doesn't make a difference whether I'm in the office or out of the office. My clients always know they can contact me, where to contact me, and I'm available to them. So I think, being present in the office is more of a management issue rather than a strictly a client or a job related issue.
True.
And, nowadays we have the technology to work remotely and to work remotely fully efficiently and effectively as if we were in the office. I think it drives companies to be less paper-based, to be more sustainable. It uses less public resources in terms of public transportation or those who drive into work. It reduces congestion in the main cities. So it would give the possibility for people also to live, outside of the city to pay an affordable rent rather than, a Zurich city rent. So, I mean, I honestly think it's the future, and I hope it comes true.
So you touched on that topic and, in various aspects. And of course, it's a very demanding and always changing environment. And over the last years, burnout and stress management have become a bigger topic. And, the way we met was at a retreat when you came. And I remember that was one of your things why you came.
Yeah.
So what is helping you and what has helped you in the past to cope and withstand that pressure? And I think with everything, it's always a journey, right?
Yes.
It's an in and out and never a perfection.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. When I first came to Switzerland, I was young, I was ambitious. I wanted to eat the world, as we say in Spain. And so I was always giving 120, 150% of myself to every job, to every project, to, every day. And that takes its toll. And with 25, 26, I developed very severe anxiety. At the time, I was working with a very demanding superior. I had a huge workload for such a young age, and I was sort of being made responsible for, things that were pretty much out of my pay range. But, you're young and you don't want to say no.
Of course.
You don't want to say no. It's, and you'd be getting calls at 9 p.m. and coming back into the office and doing and being. And eventually, I developed, just anxiety where I felt, that my throat was closing up. I couldn't breathe. And I never associated it with work. I was always like, did I eat something funny? Am I doing the wrong kind of, training? Am I smoking too much? Okay, that probably also wasn't good for me, but, I never associated it with work. And it took a long time for me to realize that actually these episodes occurred at a time when, I was getting bombarded at work or I was, being asked for more that I could give. And I mean, it was a journey. I'm still on that journey now, 7 years later. But, I have to say it really is going back to the book and, just learning to breathe, learning to meditate, learning to bring yourself down, learning to detach yourself from the rush, from the pressure, and just really trying to get that out of your head and just focus on yourself and on your well-being. And I think it can come from many different things. For some people, it's exercise. For some people, it's, as I mentioned, meditation. For other people, it's yoga. There's essential oils. There's tapping. There's so many different methods out there to help, and to prepare you for these types of situations. And, don't be afraid to try them all. That's what I always said. And that's what I did. And eventually you'll find the perfect mix. You'll integrate it into your life and you'll live, a much happier existence. Yeah. And sometimes you might have to leave your job, which I also did. Because there's just certain things that you can't fix. So, yeah.
Boundaries.
Yes, absolutely.
And you also have a horse.
Yes.
And you soon have a little dog.
Yes.
So animals are, I speak for myself, the best therapist.
Yes.
And even on busy days, they look at you with like their, I'm going to say puppy eyes.
Yes.
Please walk me. Let's go outside. And
Absolutely.
you're like, yes, let's go.
Yeah.
And so you can look forward to your dog. And I'm
very,
sure you're embracing your
very
horse.
Excited.
I used to horseback ride as a teenager. And I remember in school struggling and then just going to my horse. And well, it wasn't my horse, but I was, able to ride it and just going into the woods and everything was better.
It's crazy because horses, as well as dogs, they can feel your fear, your anxiety, your anguish. And as soon as you are, stressed or sort of you're having troubles or your mind is somewhere else, they're going to feel it and they're going to let you know that they know. Right. So
absolutely.
In a way, it is like my meditation, before you get on the horse, before you're even in the stable, everything is cleared out of your mind. Yeah.
Yeah. So for young people wanting to step into this career, what would be your tricks and tips or advice?
I have so many. I actually have to tell you, I'm writing a book about that. Yes, I actually am. Okay, it's also a project that has been going on for sort of 7 years. But no, I'm so happy to give tips and advice to young professionals or to young students looking to get into this field.
Second episode coming when the book is out.
When the book is out. No, because it is a fascinating industry. You get to meet so many incredible people, especially, entrepreneurial clients who have, built their own businesses and grown their wealth. And it's really inspiring. So, from my side, just, come into it with passion, be prepared to work because it is hard work. There's a lot of things you don't know. So you're going to have to learn a trade, sort of from zero. You may learn something in university, but, Swiss banking, for example, is a completely different deal. And there is a lot to know. So be prepared not to know everything and be prepared to ask questions. But mostly I would say just be passionate, be honest. Don't be afraid to take on challenges. And if there's really one tip I can give, that, just sort of something to always keep in mind, always be prepared for meetings. Always come prepared to a meeting. Always.
So good. I like that. And I love that not knowing. It's like beginner mindset that I think sometimes we feel we need to know everything already. And we are afraid of saying, I don't know. Like what you said with clients.
Yes.
I don't know. I'll find out.
Yes.
I'll get back to you.
Yeah.
It's okay not to know.
It's absolutely okay. It's absolutely okay. And, when you come back to the client and you've really researched the answer, they're going to appreciate it 10 times more than if you had, half told them something at the beginning.
Absolutely.
So just, don't be afraid to say you don't know and to, really be ready to look for the answers. Yeah.
Great. Well, I think that's a really good wrap up for our conversation. Last but not least, as we are on the Life Curation podcast, and life curation means how all aspects of our life are creatively intersected and influenced by each other. Life curation is about connecting the dots so that the whole beautiful artwork of our life can emerge. Do you have a life curation quote, mantra, or life motto that guides you?
I do. And, you might find it funny, but it's be your own cheerleader. I think that in many occasions, you're going to give your everything and it's not always going to be recognized. People aren't always going to come and pat you on the back. Credit isn't going to be given to you all the time. And that's pretty downheartening, right? I mean, you work for something and then, someone else takes credit or you just kind of get forgotten on the email. So just be your own cheerleader, take yourself out for a glass of wine, buy yourself a dream horse, right? I mean, who cares? It's your life, it's your effort and, be thankful to yourself.
Love that. What a good finish. Let's be our own cheerleader. Thank you so much, Cris, for being welcome. Here. And we'll go and have dinner together now.
Yes, looking forward to it.
I would love to hear what you thought of my conversation with Cris and your takeaway from this episode. You can find all links and more in the show notes linked below. If you enjoyed this episode, feel free to send it to your friends, a family member, and whoever you think could benefit. This is how I get a lot of my inspiration and discover new information when I see something on social media or a friend sends it directly to me. And of course, a stellar review over on iTunes and those magic 5 stars mean the world to me. I don't want to miss out on telling you about the free videos and downloads on my website under andrinatc.com/resources. Whether you're interested in yoga, meditation, EFT, essential oils, or need a guide from chaos to clarity, I'm sure you will find something for you. I really appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for being part of Life Curation.